My boyfriend confessed he may not love me anymore after his ex returned to town suddenly. What do you do when the person you've poured 2 years of your life into suddenly becomes a stranger? For me, it started with a whispered name and ended with a betrayal so raw, it made me question everything I thought I knew about love and about myself. Jerome and we had something good. 2 years, right? Before me, he'd been engaged to Brianna, a girl I knew from college. Everyone thought they were it. Forever. But a few months before the wedding, she just called it off. Said she needed space. Jerome was devastated. I was there for him, just a friend checking in. But as time passed, we grew closer. A year after his heartbreak, we started dating. He was kind, attentive. He made me feel so special. I really, truly believed we had something real. Then, Brianna moved back to town. I didn't hear it from him. I heard it from a mutual friend who'd spotted her at the grocery store. When I mentioned it to Jerome that night, he got quiet, changed the subject. I told myself it meant nothing. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing things. Small things at first. He was on his phone more. He'd be distracted during dinner, his mind clearly somewhere else. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd just sigh, tired from work. Then, one evening I came home early. Found him on the couch, glued to his phone. He practically jumped, putting it away fast when he saw me. "Who are you texting?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He hesitated. "Just a friend." Was it Brianna? The silence that followed screamed the answer. He finally admitted they'd been talking. She'd reached out to apologize, he said. He felt like he owed her a conversation. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that it was innocent. But my gut, it was screaming. Something was off. Something was deeply, horribly wrong. A few days later, it was supposed to be our anniversary dinner. I got to the restaurant early, picked our favorite table. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. Nothing. I kept checking my phone, my stomach twisting into knots. Finally, a short text. "Sorry, something came up. Can we reschedule?" I sat there alone, feeling stupid, watching the waiter keep glancing over. Eventually, I paid for my drink and left. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the park near campus, our spot. I don't know why. Maybe I already knew. And I was right. There they were. Jerome and Brianna, sitting on a bench. Not touching but close. Talking in a way that felt too familiar. Too intimate. I walked straight up to them. Brianna saw me first. Her face went white. Jerome turned, pure guilt flashing in his eyes. "I can explain," he started. "Were you ever going to tell me?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. A weird, detached calm washing over me. He couldn't look me in the eye. "I don't know what's happening. I'm confused." Seeing her again brought up a lot of feelings I thought were gone. He paused a long, agonizing moment. "Do you still love me?" His answer was another pause. A pause that stretched forever. I thought I did. But honestly, I don't know anymore. That was it. That was the answer I needed. Not the one I wanted, never the one I wanted, but the one I needed. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just took off the bracelet he'd given me for my birthday, the one I never took off, and set it gently on the bench between them. "I hope you figure out what you want," I said. "But I'm not going to wait around while you decide." I walked back to my car. He didn't follow. He didn't call. He didn't text that night. And that silence, it screamed louder than any words ever could. The next morning, I packed his things, left them on the porch, changed my passwords, scrubbed our photos from social media, and started the slow, agonizing process of moving on. It's been 3 months now. Some days are still harder than others. I still think about him, wonder if he ended up with Brianna, or if he's still figuring things out. But honestly, it doesn't matter anymore. What I learned, I deserve someone who is sure about me, not someone who needs his ex to reappear to question everything, not someone who leaves me sitting alone on our anniversary. My friends, though, they've been my absolute rocks. They remind me his confusion was never about me not being enough. It was about him not being ready. I'm not even angry at Brianna. People's feelings are messy. Sometimes love just isn't enough. But I know my worth now. And the next person I'm with, they'll never have to wonder if I love them. I'll make sure they know every single day. Just when I thought I was getting better, I saw it. His silver Honda, the one he bought last spring, turning the corner past my favorite coffee shop. My stomach plummeted. My hands froze over my laptop. That European history essay, due tomorrow? Totally irrelevant. I watched the empty street, hoping maybe I'd imagined it. But I knew what I saw. My coffee had gone cold. I took a sip anyway, grimacing at the bitter taste. The cursor on my screen blinked, waiting for words that wouldn't come. I typed a sentence, deleted it, typed it again. All I could think was, Jerome was just here. Maybe he was going to the bookstore. Maybe he was meeting someone. Maybe he was meeting Brianna. I shook my head, tried to refocus, but the words blurred. An hour later, I was still staring at the same blank document when Valerie dropped into the chair opposite me. Gym clothes, messy bun. She took one look at my face and knew. Immediately. She didn't say anything, just signaled to the barista and ordered us both hot chocolates. even though it was barely 3 in the afternoon. When they arrived, she just held her mug, patient, calm. I appreciated that. She didn't push. She just waited. Finally, I closed my laptop and told her about seeing Jerome's car. She nodded slowly, no surprise. I realized then I'd been doing this act. Pretending 3 months was enough time to be completely over a 2-year relationship. But Valerie saw right through it. She always does. Then I confessed something I'd been keeping secret for weeks. I'd been checking Jerome's social media from a friend's account. I blocked him on mine, but I made a fake one. The confession tumbled out. I felt so stupid saying it. But Valerie didn't look shocked or disappointed. She just nodded, took a sip of her hot chocolate. Gently, she said, "Maybe you're not as over it as you keep telling everyone." The truth of that hit me hard. I had been lying to myself. Every night, logging into that fake account, scrolling through his posts, looking for clues about Brianna, examining every photo, every comment, trying to piece together his life without me. Valerie reached across the table, squeezed my hand. "It's okay not to be okay yet," she said. "Healing isn't linear. Stop beating yourself up for having bad days." That night, back at our apartment, I sat on my bed, phone in hand. Valerie was in the living room, giving me space, but I knew she was there. I opened the app, navigated to that fake account. My finger hovered over the delete button. My heart raced. It felt like ripping off a bandage. This idea of cutting off access to his life. But Valerie was right. This constant checking was keeping me stuck, preventing me from moving forward. I pressed delete. The account vanished. Immediately, I wanted to recreate it, find another way to keep tabs. But instead, I got up, walked to the living room. Valerie had queued up some terrible reality show about people getting married without ever meeting. We watched 3 episodes. She made popcorn. Every 5 minutes, I'd reach for my phone before remembering there was nothing to check anymore. By the time we went to bed, the urge had lessened, just slightly, but it was still there, lurking. My phone rang the next morning as I was pouring cereal. Tiana, my older sister. She has this way of knowing. I answered. Before I could even say hello, she asked if I was really okay or just pretending. Something in her voice, the genuine concern, broke through the wall I'd built. I started crying right there in the kitchen, my cereal getting soggy. I told her everything. The social media stalking, seeing Jerome's car, how I still thought about him constantly, how pathetic I felt for not being over it, for still caring about someone who couldn't choose me. Tiana listened, didn't interrupt. When I finally stopped, she was quiet for a moment. Then she reminded me, 3 months isn't long to get over a 2-year relationship. Everyone has their own timeline for grief, she said. Yours doesn't have to match anyone else's expectations. Then she suggested something I hadn't considered, seeing the campus counselor, to work through it properly. I immediately wanted to say no. I don't need therapy for a breakup. Other people have real problems. But Tiana cut through that excuse before I could voice it. Your pain is valid, she said, regardless of whether someone else's might be worse. She told me she'd been seeing a therapist for years, and to help her process things she never could alone. By the end of the call, I'd agreed to at least look into making an appointment. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Making the appointment felt like admitting defeat, like I couldn't handle this on my own. I pulled up the campus counseling center website, stared at the contact form. My fingers hovered. I almost tabbed away 3 different times. Finally, I typed out my information, fast before I could change my mind. Name, student ID, reason for appointment. I wrote breakup and emotional processing, then deleted it. Wrote relationship issues instead. Less dramatic, less like I was making a big deal out of nothing. I hit submit. Immediately wanted to take it back. The confirmation page said someone would call me within 2 business days. I closed my laptop. Felt silly, asking for help over a breakup when others had family deaths or mental illness or trauma. But then I remembered Tiana. My pain is valid. I tried to believe it. 2 days later, the phone rang. The receptionist from the counseling center. Kind. Understanding. She didn't make me explain everything. Just basic questions. Scheduled me for the following week. She even mentioned evening appointments. I booked a Thursday at 6 o'clock. Wrote it in my planner. Then, immediately, wondered if I should cancel. But I didn't. I left it there. A commitment I'd made to myself. To actually try to work through this. That afternoon, Matthew texted. Lunch? We hadn't hung out since the breakup. Matthew and I became friends through Jerome. Part of me thought it would be weird. Another part of me realized I was letting Jerome take away my friends, too. Like I'd given him so much already, and now I was giving him the friendships we built together. I texted back, yes. We met at the sandwich place near campus. Lunch was surprisingly normal. He didn't mention Jerome at all until I brought it up. We talked about classes, cafeteria food, the new professor everyone hated. It felt good. A conversation not about my breakup. To be reminded I was a person with interests beyond this one thing that happened to me. When I finally asked awkwardly if he still talked to Jerome, Matthew was honest. He admitted he was still friends with both of us, but refused to play messenger or take sides. I respected that. He said he cared about us both and hoped we could be happy, but he wouldn't report back. I appreciated the boundary, even though a part of me still wanted to ask, is Jerome happy? Is he with Brianna? Does he ever mention me? Matthew casually mentioned I'd been skipping our Thursday game nights. I hadn't realized how much I'd withdrawn. Thursday nights used to be our thing. Me, Jerome, Matthew, and a rotating group of friends. Board games. Pizza. After the breakup, I just stopped going, automatically assuming those nights weren't for me anymore. Matthew said everyone missed me. Asked if I'd consider coming back. He promised it wouldn't be weird. Jerome hadn't been coming either, so I wouldn't run into him. I told Matthew I'd think about it, and I meant it. Maybe it was time to stop letting Jerome's absence dictate what I did, what I went. Maybe it was time to reclaim the parts of my life I'd given up without him even asking. Thursday came, faster than I wanted. I spent the whole day feeling sick about game night, checking the clock, thinking of excuses. 3 times I convinced myself to skip. 3 times I talked myself back into going. Valerie watched me change outfits twice. Finally, she just said, "You look fine. Stop overthinking it." The student center was packed when I arrived. I almost turned around in the doorway, but then I saw them. The usual group. Our table in the back corner. Matthew waved me over. I walked through the crowd, feeling like everyone was staring, even though nobody was. When I sat down, someone passed me a controller, asked if I wanted in on the next round. Nobody mentioned Jerome. Nobody asked where I'd been. Nobody made it awkward. We just played cards. Someone ordered pizza. I laughed at the same stupid jokes we always made. It felt normal, in a way I didn't think was possible anymore. By the end of the night, my face hurt from smiling. I'd actually had fun. My first therapy session. Tuesday at 6 o'clock. I showed up 10 minutes early. Picked at my cuticles in the waiting room until they called my name. The therapist was younger than I expected, maybe in her 30s. Dark hair, bun. She introduced herself. Asked what brought me in. I started explaining about Jerome and Brianna. Within 5 minutes, I was crying. Then apologizing for crying. Then crying about apologizing for crying. Feeling stupid for being this upset over a breakup when others came in with real problems. She handed me tissues. Waited patiently until I could breathe. She told me grief over a relationship is real grief. Not something to minimize or rush. No timeline for healing. No wrong way to feel. I left feeling raw, but somehow lighter. Like maybe it was okay not to be okay yet. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. Decided to try something new. I'd been thinking about the campus gym for months. But Jerome always said he wasn't a morning person. Preferred sleeping in. I grabbed my old workout clothes. Headed over before I could change my mind. The gym was mostly empty at 6 a.m. Just a few dedicated runners. Someone lifting weights. I got on an elliptical. Put in my headphones. For 30 minutes, I didn't think about anything except moving. And breathing. When I was done, I felt tired but good. Accomplished. Something that was just for me. I decided to come back tomorrow. By Friday, I'd been to the gym 3 times. Started recognizing the regulars. A girl always on the same treadmill. A guy doing pull-ups for what seemed like hours. On my way to the water fountain, I ran into Kellen from my biology class. He was wearing a tank top. Looked surprised to see me. We started talking about the upcoming exam. He mentioned struggling with the genetics unit. I admitted I was confused too. We stood there, comparing notes for 10 minutes. He was easy to talk to. Didn't seem to know anything about my relationship drama. It felt refreshing. When we said goodbye, he said he'd see me in class. I realized I was smiling. Saturday afternoon, Valerie came into my room. Phone in hand. Weird expression. She asked if I wanted to see something. I knew. Immediately. It was about Jerome. Part of me wanted to say no, but I took the phone. A post from a mutual friend. Jerome and Brianna. At a restaurant. Sitting across from each other. He was laughing at something she said. My chest tightened. I felt physically sick. Like someone had punched me. I handed the phone back. Told Valerie I was fine. But she knew I was lying. I spent the rest of the day in bed, scrolling, feeling sorry for myself. Sunday was the same. Barely ate. Ignored texts. Kept replaying that photo. Angry at Jerome for moving on so fast. Angry at Brianna for existing. Angry at myself for still caring this much. Monday morning, my door flew open. Tiana. Looking annoyed. She'd driven up from home without telling me. Clearly not taking no for an answer. She literally pulled the covers off me. Told me to get dressed. We were leaving. I tried to argue, but she wasn't having it. She drove me to a salon, got my hair trimmed while I sat there numb. Then, she took me to lunch at my favorite sandwich place. Reminded me that I was allowed to have bad days, but I couldn't live in them. Seeing that photo was hard, she said, but hiding in bed isn't going to make it hurt less. I knew she was right, but it was easier to feel sorry for myself. By the time she dropped me back at my apartment, I felt a little better, less stuck. In my next therapy session, I talked about seeing the photo, how it made me feel like I had wasted 2 years. The therapist asked what I learned during those 2 years. I realized I didn't know how to answer. She helped me reframe it. 2 years of learning what I want and what I don't want. The time wasn't wasted just because it ended, she said. Every experience teaches us something. I wasn't sure I believed her yet, but I wrote it down. She gave me homework. List 3 things I want in my next relationship that I didn't have with Jerome. I promised to bring it next week. Wednesday, after biology class, Kellen caught up with me, asked if I wanted to be study partners. We were both struggling. I agreed immediately, grateful for the distraction, the chance to focus on something other than my breakup. We exchanged numbers, made plans to meet at the library on Friday. When I told Valerie about it later, she raised her eyebrows. Is he cute? I threw a pillow at her. It's just studying. But she was smiling, like she knew something I didn't. Friday, at the library, Kellen was already at a table, textbook open, notes everywhere. We spent 2 hours on genetics. Flashcards. He was patient when I didn't understand, explained things in a way that actually made sense. During a break, he mentioned he transferred this semester from another state. That explained it. He didn't know my history with Jerome, or the breakup. It was nice, being around someone who saw me, not Jerome's ex-girlfriend, or the girl who got dumped. When we packed up, he asked if I wanted to study again next week. I said yes, without hesitating. Sunday night doing homework. I realized it. 3 whole days, without constantly thinking about Jerome. Then I immediately ruined it by thinking about how I hadn't been thinking about him. I texted Valerie. She responded with 3 laughing emojis. That's still progress, she wrote, even if you did just break your streak by noticing. I put my phone down, tried to focus on my essay, but I was smiling. Maybe she was right. Tuesday afternoon, Matthew texted. Party at his friend's apartment this weekend? I started typing no automatically. Parties meant people who knew Jerome. Questions. But then Matthew added, Jerome is definitely out of town, visiting his parents. You won't have to worry about seeing him. I stared at that message for a long time, feeling pathetic that I needed that reassurance just to go to a party. I typed yes before I could change my mind. Immediately regretted it. Valerie found me stress cleaning the bathroom that night. Made me stop scrubbing the same spot on the sink for the 3rd time. She reminded me, going out, being social, it's good for me, even if it feels scary. Saturday night, I changed outfits 4 times. Settled on jeans and a sweater. Comfortable. Not trying too hard. The party was already crowded when I arrived. Matthew met me at the door. Handed me a drink. Introduced me to a group from his engineering classes. Nobody asked about Jerome. Nobody even mentioned him. Instead, they asked about my major. My classes. A girl named Sophie told me about her ceramics class. How terrible she was at throwing pots. But how much fun it was anyway. A guy named Derek mentioned a backpacking trip next summer. Asked if I'd ever been hiking. I found myself actually talking about things I was interested in, not just being Jerome's girlfriend. Around midnight, I was talking to a guy named Alex. Shared hatred of statistics homework. He asked for my number. I froze. Wasn't expecting it. Wasn't sure I was ready. But Valerie's voice popped into my head. Giving someone your number doesn't mean you're committing to anything. So, I typed my contact info into his phone. He texted me immediately, so I had his number too. I felt weird. Guilty. Like I was doing something wrong. Even though Jerome and I had been broken up for months. I left the party feeling lighter than I had in weeks. I had actual conversations. About myself as a person. Not as half of a couple. The next morning, I woke to a text from Alex. Coffee sometime this week? My stomach dropped. Immediate panic. What was I thinking? Giving him my number? I'm clearly not ready to date anyone. I stared at the message for hours. Doing homework. Cleaning my room. Anything to avoid responding. Valerie came home from the library. Found me staring at my phone. I showed her the text. She sat down beside me. You don't owe him anything. It's completely okay not to be ready. She helped me write a polite message. I'm not really in a place to date right now, but I appreciate you asking. He responded within minutes. Said he totally understood. Hoped I was doing okay. I was relieved he was nice, but also frustrated with myself for not being ready to move on. My therapy appointment on Wednesday felt heavier than usual. I couldn't stop thinking about how everyone expected me to be over Jerome by now. I told the therapist about the party, giving Alex my number, panicking when he followed up. She asked why I felt pressure to start dating again. I admitted it was because being single felt like proof that I was still broken. Then she asked what I was actually sad about when I thought about Jerome. And I realized I didn't know how to answer that. She rephrased it. Are you mourning the relationship itself, or the future you thought you were going to have? That question sat in my chest like a weight. She was right. I wasn't actually that sad about losing Jerome the person. I was sad about losing the apartment we were going to get together, the trips we'd planned, the life I'd built in my head where everything worked out. I'd imagined holidays with his family, getting engaged, a whole future that didn't exist anymore. Walking back to my apartment after therapy, something shifted in my brain. I wasn't upset about Jerome the person. I was upset about having to reimagine my entire future without the framework I'd built around us. That night, I pulled out a notebook, started a list, things I wanted to do, nothing to do with relationships, or Jerome, or anyone else. Taking a pottery class like Sophie mentioned, applying for a summer internship abroad. I'd always wanted to travel, but Jerome never wanted to leave the state. All the books on my shelf I never got around to reading because I was always doing what Jerome wanted to do instead. The list got longer, and I started feeling excited, instead of sad. These were things I actually wanted for myself. Thursday, after our biology exam, Kellen suggested coffee to celebrate surviving another test. We ended up at the campus coffee shop, compared our probably wrong answers, laughed about how much we hated memorizing cell structures. He mentioned he was planning to study abroad next fall. Australia. His whole face lit up when he talked about it. I found myself telling him about the internship programs I'd been researching, how I was thinking about applying, even though the deadline was only 2 weeks away. He got so enthusiastic, pulled up the application website on his phone, made me promise to apply. Sometimes you just have to take the risk and figure out the details later, he said. Walking back to my apartment, I actually believed I might apply, instead of just thinking about it. That weekend, I was at my desk, working on the internship application. Valerie came home, looked uncomfortable. She sat on her bed, said she heard from a mutual friend that Jerome and Brianna were having problems. My first reaction, a surge of hope. It made me feel disgusting, pathetic. I hated that part of me was happy they were struggling, because it meant maybe he'd realize he made a mistake. Valerie saw it on my face, gently reminded me, even if they break up, it doesn't mean Jerome and I should get back together. I knew she was right, but I couldn't stop thinking about it all night. Monday morning, I called Tiana, admitted I was still hoping Jerome would come back, even though I knew it was stupid. She listened. Then she said something that hit me hard. Even if Jerome did realize his mistake and wanted you back, taking him back would mean settling for someone who couldn't choose you the first time. She reminded me he left me sitting alone on our anniversary, made me question my worth for months. You deserve someone who never makes you doubt whether they want you. I knew she was right, but letting go of that hope felt impossible. In my next therapy session, I talked about still holding on to hope, even though I knew we were wrong for each other. The therapist asked why letting go felt so hard, and I realized it was because letting go of hope felt like admitting I failed, like admitting the relationship ending was real and final, and I had to actually move forward instead of waiting. She helped me see that holding on to hope was actually holding me back from choosing myself, from building the life I actually wanted. She said letting go isn't giving up. It's making space for something better. I left that session feeling exhausted, but also lighter somehow. Like I finally had permission to stop waiting for Jerome to fix things and start fixing them myself. I spent the rest of the week finishing the application. Every section needed attention. I kept second-guessing my answers. Why I wanted this internship. What I hoped to gain. The truth? I wanted to be somewhere Jerome had never been. Start completely fresh. But I couldn't write that. So I focused on professional development, cultural immersion. The night before the deadline, I was still tweaking my personal statement. At 10:30, Valerie brought me tea. It's good enough, she said. Stop obsessing. But I read through it 3 more times, making tiny changes that probably didn't matter. At 11:45, I was staring at the submit button, feeling like I might throw up. This felt huge. If I got this, I'd be gone for months, in a city where nobody knew about Jerome or Brianna. I'd just be me, without all the baggage of the past year. My cursor hovered. I took a deep breath. At 11:59, I clicked submit. Immediately closed my laptop, like I might change my mind if I looked at it any longer. My hands were shaking. I felt this weird mix of excited and terrified. Valerie hugged me, said she was proud of me for taking the risk. The next morning, Kellen texted, "Art exhibit in the student union?" I almost said no. I had reading to catch up on, but then I remembered the therapist, saying yes to things, so I texted back that I was in. We met up around noon. The exhibit was student work. Some of it was actually really good. We walked slowly through the gallery. Kellen pointed out his favorite pieces. I tried to figure out what the abstract ones were supposed to represent. He made jokes about how one painting looked like someone spilled their lunch. I laughed harder than the joke deserved. We spent almost 2 hours just looking at art, talking about classes, his plans for Australia. He asked about my internship application. I told him I submitted it last night. He got really enthusiastic, said he had a good feeling about it. I realized we hadn't talked about relationships, or exes, or anything heavy. It was just easy, comfortable. I didn't have to explain myself or my past. When we left, the sun was setting. The campus looked pretty in the golden light. Kellen walked me partway back to my apartment, still making terrible jokes about the abstract paintings. I was laughing at something he said about geometric shapes when it hit me. I hadn't thought about Jerome all day, until just now. The thought came suddenly. I almost stopped walking. An entire day went by, and I was just living my life without that constant background noise of missing him, or wondering what he was doing. Kellen noticed I got quiet. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm good," I told him. And I actually meant it. Thursday game night. I showed up with snacks like usual. Matthew was already setting up. A few others from our group were scattered around the table. We played for about an hour. I was actually winning for once, when Matthew casually mentioned Jerome, asked about me. Everyone at the table went quiet, looked at me, like they were waiting for me to fall apart. But my first reaction wasn't hope or sadness. It was annoyance. Like he doesn't get to check on me now. After he walked away and chose Brianna, Matthew must have seen something on my face. He quickly added he didn't tell Jerome much, just that I was doing fine. I appreciated that, but I was still irritated. That Jerome thought he could just ask mutual friends how I was doing, like we were casual acquaintances. He gave up the right to know about my life when he left me sitting alone at that restaurant. I focused back on the game, played my next hand. Someone changed the subject to an upcoming concert. The conversation moved on, but I was still thinking about it on my walk home. The old me would have been hopeful. That Jerome asking meant something. But now, I was just annoyed that he thought he could keep tabs on me from a distance. I don't want him wondering about me. I want him to forget I exist, the same way I'm trying to forget he exists. 2 days later, I was in my room, working on an essay. My laptop dinged. New email. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. It was from the Barcelona internship program. My heart started racing before I even opened it. The subject line, video interview request. I actually screamed. Valerie came running from the kitchen, thinking something was wrong. But I was jumping up and down, pointing at my laptop. They want to interview me. They actually want to interview me. We were both screaming now, jumping around like idiots. My downstairs neighbor banged on their ceiling. I didn't care. I read the email 5 times, made sure it was real. They wanted a video interview next week. Attached information about what to prepare. Valerie grabbed my hands. We jumped some more, until we were both out of breath, laughing. This felt real now. In a way it didn't before. I might actually go to Barcelona. I might actually get to start over. Somewhere completely new. I spent the next few days preparing. They sent a list of possible questions, goals, qualifications, what I hope to gain. I wrote out answers, practiced saying them out loud until they sounded natural, not rehearsed. Valerie played interviewer, asked me the questions while I tried not to sound too nervous. I researched the program, the city, the company I'd be working with. Every free moment went into preparation. I realized how much energy I'd been wasting on thinking about Jerome, when I could have been focusing on things like this, things that actually mattered for my future. I practiced talking about my strengths, my experience, my academic interests. I remembered that I'm actually good at things. I have skills, knowledge, ambition, things that have nothing to do with being someone's girlfriend. The realization felt important, like I was remembering who I was before Jerome, and also discovering who I could be after him. The day of the interview, I set up my laptop. Good lighting, neat background. I wore a nice shirt, probably too much makeup. I was nervous. The interviewer was a woman named Clara, friendly, asked thoughtful questions. I answered each one as honestly as I could, while still sounding professional. She asked why I wanted this internship. I talked about wanting to experience a different culture, challenge myself in new ways. I did mention wanting to escape everything familiar, but maybe she could read between the lines. The interview lasted about 30 minutes. By the end, I felt good. I was confident, clear, didn't stumble too much. When it was over, I sat in my room, proud of myself. I showed up as myself, gave it my best effort. Whatever happens now is out of my control, but I did everything I could. That has to count for something. Tiana drove up that weekend, took me out for dinner. Italian place downtown. We ordered too much food like always. She asked about the interview. I told her every detail. She listened, smiled. Then she said something that caught me off guard. "I've noticed a real change in you over the past few weeks," she said. "You seem more like the person you were before Jerome, but also somehow more solid, more sure of yourself." I didn't know what to say. I'd been so focused on just getting through each day. I hadn't thought about whether I was actually changing. But maybe she was right. Maybe going through this and coming out the other side had made me stronger. We finished dinner, drove around town, talking about nothing important. She dropped me off, hugged me tight, told me she was proud, and I believed her. The next week, I was at the grocery store, picking up basics. When I saw her, Brianna, in the produce section. My heart started racing. That familiar panic. She was looking at apples. Hadn't seen me yet. I could have turned around, left, but something made me stay. I grabbed what I needed, walked past her aisle. She looked up. Our eyes met. Her expression shifted. Guilt? Regret? She opened her mouth, like she wanted to say something, but I just nodded, politely, and kept walking. I didn't stop, didn't engage, didn't give her the chance to explain, or apologize, or whatever she was going to say. My hands were shaking as I checked out, but I felt powerful. I chose my own peace, over my curiosity about what she wanted to say. I chose to walk away, instead of getting pulled back into their drama. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for a minute, let my heart rate return to normal. I did it. I saw her, and I didn't fall apart. In therapy 2 days later, I talked about the grocery store encounter, how my first instinct was panic, but how I managed to just keep walking. She pointed out that I was finally putting my own peace above my curiosity about Jerome and Brianna. She was right. The old me would have stopped, talked to Brianna just to get information about Jerome. I would have tortured myself with whatever she said, analyzed it for days, but I didn't do that this time. I chose myself instead. The therapist said that was real progress, and I should recognize it. We talked about how healing isn't linear. I'd probably still have hard days, but the fact that I could handle seeing Brianna without falling apart, it showed how far I'd come. I left the session feeling lighter. I wasn't completely healed, and I still thought about Jerome sometimes, but I was getting there, and that was enough for now. A few days after my last study session with Kellen, he texted, "Concert next month?" The message sat on my phone for a minute. I processed what he was really asking. This wasn't about studying or coffee. This was different. I texted back, "What band?" He sent me a link, a group I'd mentioned liking weeks ago, during one of our library sessions. He remembered. That small detail made me smile, but also made my stomach twist with something like guilt. I met him at the student center the next afternoon. We sat outside on a bench near the fountain. The weather was getting colder. I pulled my jacket tighter. We talked about nothing important for a few minutes. Then I just said it, straight out. I told him I wasn't looking for a relationship right now. The words felt awkward, but I forced myself to keep going. I explained I was still figuring out who I was on my own. Didn't want to lead him on, or make him think this was going somewhere it wasn't. Kellen listened, without interrupting. When I finished, he just nodded, said he understood, said he genuinely enjoyed spending time with me. No pressure, no expectations. He still wanted to go to the concert, as friends, if I was interested. The relief I felt was immediate, and I agreed. We spent another hour talking about our biology final. I left feeling lighter, like I'd handled something difficult in the right way. That night, Valerie asked me point blank, "Are you ready to start dating again?" We were in our apartment, making dinner. She was chopping vegetables. I was stirring pasta. Her question caught me off guard. I opened my mouth to give her some automatic answer about taking things slow, but then I stopped. I actually thought about it for a minute, really considered what I wanted, instead of what I thought I should want. The answer surprised me. I told her I didn't know if I wanted to date right now. I was enjoying figuring out who I was on my own, without trying to fit myself into someone else's life, or mold myself into what they needed. Valerie stopped chopping, looked at me, part surprise, part pride. She said that was probably the healthiest thing she'd heard me say in months. We finished dinner, ate while watching some cooking competition show, and I felt good about my answer. I wasn't avoiding relationships out of fear or hurt. I was choosing myself, on purpose. 2 weeks later, I was in the library, studying for my literature final. My phone buzzed. Email notification. I almost ignored it, deep into analyzing some poem about nature and mortality. But something made me check. Subject line, Barcelona Summer Internship Program. My heart immediately started racing. I opened the email. Read the first line 3 times before it registered. They're offering me the position. I got it. I actually got the internship in Barcelona. My eyes started watering right there in the quiet study section. I had to close my laptop, shove my books into my bag. People were staring as I hurried toward the exit, but I didn't care. The tears were happy ones, but they wouldn't stop coming. I got outside into the cold air, immediately called Tiana. She answered on the second ring. I could barely get the words out, crying and laughing at the same time, telling her about the email. She screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. A million questions. When do I leave? What's the program? Am I scared? I answered, walking aimlessly around campus, too excited to stand still. By the time we hung up, my face hurt from smiling. My fingers were numb from the cold, but I felt like I could run a marathon. I called my parents that evening, told them about Barcelona. My mom's reaction was immediate joy, followed by 1,000 practical questions. Housing, safety, will I visit before I leave? My dad got on the phone. congratulated me, made some joke about me becoming too sophisticated. But then my mom said something that made me pause. She told me she was proud for taking a risk, for choosing an adventure. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I realized this was the first major decision I'd made in years that had nothing to do with a boyfriend. I didn't choose Barcelona because Jerome wanted me to, or because it would be good for our relationship. I chose it for me, for my own growth, my own future. That realization sat with me after we hung up. I'm making choices based on what I want, not what someone else needs from me. The next week, Matthew found me at game night, pulled me aside during a break. He had this weird expression, like he wasn't sure whether to tell me something. Finally, he just said it. Jerome heard about your Barcelona internship. Seemed surprised you were leaving the country. Matthew didn't elaborate on how Jerome found out, or what exactly he said, but hearing it gave me this small surge of satisfaction that I didn't feel guilty about. Jerome is realizing I have a whole life that doesn't involve him anymore. I'm not sitting around, waiting for him to figure out his feelings, or hoping he'll come back. I'm moving forward, with plans that are bigger than our failed relationship. I thanked Matthew. We went back to playing cards. Later that night, I thought about Jerome being surprised, and I smiled. Good. Let him be surprised. Let him see that I'm doing more than just surviving without him. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into planning for Barcelona. I researched the city obsessively, neighborhoods, metro lines, best coffee. I joined online groups for the internship program, started talking to other students who would be there. I watched videos about Spanish culture, tried to learn basic phrases, even though the program was in English. Every night, I fell asleep reading about Barcelona, or looking at photos of the architecture and beaches. The excitement built with each new thing I learned. What struck me most? How genuinely happy I was about going alone. I wasn't wishing I had someone to share it with, or feeling sad about experiencing it by myself. The idea of being somewhere Jerome had never been, of starting completely fresh in a place with no memories of us, it felt like freedom. I was creating a whole new chapter of my life that belonged only to me. The concert with Kellen. Cold Friday night, early December. We met outside the venue. The energy of the crowd immediately lifted my mood. Inside, the music was loud, lights flashing. For 2 hours, I didn't think about Jerome, or Barcelona, or anything. Just the band, the songs. Kellen and I danced, sang along. Between sets, we talked about nothing important. It was easy, fun, uncomplicated. When the concert ended, he walked me back to my apartment. At my door, he kissed me goodnight. It was nice. His lips were soft. He smelled like cologne and cold night air. But I didn't feel fireworks, or that electric spark everyone talks about. When we pulled apart, I was okay with that. I was learning that friendship and fun matter, too. That not every kiss has to be earth-shattering or lead to something serious. We said goodnight. I went inside, feeling content. Not giddy, not obsessed, genuinely content. And that felt like its own kind of progress. The semester ended. I started packing up my dorm room for winter break, sorting through books and papers. I found an old photo of Jerome and me, tucked inside a notebook I hadn't opened in months. We were at some outdoor festival, both smiling at the camera, arms around each other. I looked at it for a long minute. The sadness that came was real, but it wasn't devastating. It didn't knock the wind out of me, or make me want to cry. I just felt a quiet melancholy for what we had, and what I thought we'd be. Then I tore the photo in half, threw it in the trash bag, with all the other things I was getting rid of. I kept packing, folding clothes, wrapping up decorations. By the time I was done, the photo was buried under other garbage, and I'd moved on to making my packing list for going home. At Tiana's house for the holidays, I told my whole family about Barcelona. Over dinner, the first night, my younger cousins thought it was cool, asked if I'd meet famous soccer players. My aunt wanted to know about the food, whether I'd be safe traveling alone. My uncle made jokes about me forgetting English, coming back with an accent. They asked about Jerome once, just a casual question, if we were still in touch. I said we hadn't spoken. Then someone changed the subject, asked about my internship duties. The conversation moved on naturally. I was grateful. Jerome was becoming just a footnote in my story, not the main plot anymore. After dinner, Tiana and I did dishes together. She bumped my shoulder with hers. Didn't say anything, but the gesture said enough. She was proud of me. I was proud of me too. New Year's Eve, I was back in town with Valerie and our group of friends at someone's apartment party. Packed, loud, everyone drinking cheap champagne, wearing silly hats. As midnight approached, we all crowded around the TV. Countdown. The numbers ticked down. People started shouting. 10, 9, 8. Valerie grabbed my hand, squeezed. 7, 6, 5. I looked around at all these people who stuck by me through the hardest months. 4, 3, 2. At midnight, everyone cheered, hugged, kissed. Valerie pulled me into a tight hug. Happy New Year. I hugged her back, realized something. I didn't feel sad about being single. I didn't feel like I was missing out, or wish I had someone to kiss at midnight. Instead, I felt hopeful about all the possibilities ahead, grateful for the people who supported me, excited about Barcelona, proud of how far I'd come. The old me would have spent this night crying over Jerome, or feeling sorry for myself. But I wasn't that person anymore. I was someone who chose herself, and her dreams, and that felt like the best way to start a new year. Back at school in January, the campus felt different, like I was seeing it through new eyes, instead of through the fog of heartbreak that clouded everything last semester. I was walking to my first class when I spotted Jerome, across the quad, near the library steps. He was wearing his red jacket, carrying his backpack, looking exactly the same as he always did. My heart did a small flutter, but it was more like muscle memory than actual feeling. He saw me at the same moment, raised his hand in a wave. I waved back, without breaking my stride, or feeling the need to change direction. He's just someone I used to know now, someone who was part of my life, but isn't anymore. The distance between us felt right, like we were both exactly where we're supposed to be. I kept walking to class, and didn't look back. The first thing I did to start my last semester before Barcelona? Signed up for Introduction to Pottery, in the art building. I'd always wanted to take it, but Jerome thought art classes were a waste of time, compared to practical courses. Now, I could do whatever I wanted. The studio smelled like wet clay and paint. 15 of us, sitting at pottery wheels. The instructor showed us how to center the clay, shape it. My first attempt collapsed. A lumpy mess. Within 30 seconds. My second attempt slid off the wheel completely. By the end of class, my hands were covered in dried clay, and I hadn't made anything that looked remotely like a bowl. But I was smiling. The whole walk back to my apartment. It was mine. This messy, creative thing that had nothing to do with anyone else's expectations. Kellen and I fell into an easy pattern. Library twice a week to study. Sometimes lunch at the student union afterward. No pressure. No weird tension. Just comfortable friendship. One afternoon, he mentioned he'd been seeing someone from his physics class. Asked if I wanted to meet her sometime. I told him I'd love to, and I meant it. When he talked about her, his whole face lit up, in a way that made me genuinely happy for him. We were sitting in the cafeteria when she came over. A girl with dark curly hair, a bright laugh. She was nice, clearly into Kellen. Watching them together didn't make me feel jealous or left out. It just made me feel like everything worked out the way it should have. In pottery class, there was a guy named Devin, 2 wheels over, better at pottery than I was, but not by much. We joked about our disasters while cleaning up. One Thursday, he asked if I wanted to get coffee sometime. Just the 2 of us. I said yes, without overthinking it or making excuses. We met at the coffee shop on Saturday afternoon, talked about our classes, families, what we wanted to do after graduation. He was studying environmental science, wanted to work for the National Park Service. I told him about Barcelona. He thought it sounded incredible. The conversation flowed naturally. I didn't feel nervous, or like I was performing some version of myself. When we finished our coffee, he asked if I wanted to do it again, and I was honest with him. I'm leaving for Barcelona in a few months, not really looking for anything serious. He said he appreciated the honesty. We left it as friends. Walking home, I felt proud of myself for being open to meeting someone new, even if it didn't turn into a relationship. My therapy sessions were winding down before Barcelona. In one of our last meetings, the therapist asked how I felt about Jerome now. I sat there thinking, really considering the question. Instead of giving an automatic answer, I realized I hadn't thought about him in weeks, except in passing, like when I saw his favorite restaurant, or heard a song we used to listen to. The sharp pain was gone. What was left was just a quiet acceptance that we weren't right for each other. I told the therapist this. She smiled. That's real progress, she said. Healing isn't about never thinking of someone, but about thinking of them without it hurting. She asked what I'd learned about myself through all of this. I told her I learned I'm stronger than I thought, that I can choose myself even when it's hard, and that I don't need someone else to make me whole. Valerie and I started planning my going-away party 2 weeks before I left. She insisted on hosting it at our apartment, invited everyone who'd been part of my support system these past months. The night of the party, people started arriving. 7 o'clock. Food, drinks, little gifts for my trip. Matthew showed up with a Spanish phrase book wrapped in newspaper. I laughed so hard I almost cried. He hugged me, told me he was proud for taking this leap. The apartment filled up. Friends, music, laughter. I looked around at all these people who stuck by me when I was a mess. Valerie made a toast about how I'm the bravest person she knows. Everyone raised their glasses. I felt overwhelmed with gratitude and love for these humans who saw me at my worst and loved me anyway. My last week before leaving, I was at the coffee shop, finishing some paperwork for Barcelona. When Jerome walked in, we made eye contact. There was a moment where we could both pretend we didn't see each other, but instead he walked over to my table, asked if he could sit for a minute. I said okay. We made small talk about school. Then he mentioned he heard about my internship in Barcelona. He said it sounded amazing. He was happy for me. I could tell he meant it. I told him I hoped things were going well for him, and I meant that too. We talked for maybe 5 minutes. Just two people who used to be important to each other, catching up briefly. When he left, I realized I was genuinely happy for him, and genuinely happy for myself, that we were both better off living separate lives. There was no anger, no bitterness left, just acceptance. I boarded my plane to Barcelona. 2 huge suitcases that barely fit in the overhead bins. A backpack stuffed with guidebooks and travel documents. My seat was by the window. As we taxied down the runway, I pressed my face against the glass, watching everything get smaller. The airport buildings shrank to toy size. Then the cars on the highway became little dots. Then the whole city spread out below me like a map. As we climbed higher, broke through the clouds, I felt this incredible lightness in my chest. I was finally moving forward. Instead of looking back at what I lost, I was choosing adventure, growth, and myself. The flight attendant came by with drinks. I ordered a ginger ale, opened one of my guidebooks to the section on Barcelona neighborhoods. My first week in Barcelona was a blur. New faces, new streets, getting lost trying to find my apartment. I made friends, other interns, from Brazil, Germany, Australia. We explored the city together in our free time. I sent Tiana and Valerie approximately 1 million photos of the architecture, the beaches, the tiny tapas bars we discovered. They responded with strings of heart emojis, messages saying how proud they were, how much they missed me. I missed them too, but I was too busy soaking up everything new to feel homesick yet. My Spanish was terrible, but I was learning, and the woman who ran the cafe near my apartment was patient with me when I butchered my coffee order. Every morning, I woke up excited about what the day would bring. Standing on my tiny apartment balcony at sunset, I looked out at the Barcelona skyline, its mix of old Gothic buildings and modern architecture. The sky was pink and orange. The street below me was full of people, heading home from work, or out to dinner. I thought about how 3 months ago I was sitting in my apartment, unable to imagine feeling happy again. I was so convinced that losing Jerome meant losing my future, that I'd never stop hurting. But here I was, in a completely different country, living a life I chose for myself. I'm not completely healed, and I still have moments where sadness catches me off guard. But I chose myself and my dreams over waiting around for someone who couldn't choose me. That feels like the best kind of ending, and the best kind of beginning, all at once. What do you think? Have you ever had to choose yourself over a relationship, even when it felt impossible? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.